Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, everyone. We're delighted to be here and want to welcome you all warmly. We feel deeply honored to be asked to speak at this extraordinary gathering of explorers worldwide. We'd like to start by sharing with you a 1.5-minute video film introducing you to our work in Africa. And this film was originally made for the Explorers Club annual dinner in 1993.
Carol Beckwith and Angela Fisher have been photographing the peoples and cultures of Africa for the past 25 years, captivated by the immense variety and rich traditions of this mysterious land. They have travelled to some of the most remote corners of the continent, building relationships of deep trust and friendship with peoples who have rarely encountered the Western world. This has given them access to rituals and ceremonies normally held in secret, and their series of books has recorded and preserved these ancient traditions, even as they vanish.
For the past 45 years, Angela and I have dedicated our lives to recording cultural traditions across the continent, traditions that mark the human life cycle from birth to death. We've been continuously drawn back to Africa by its tremendous diversity, its creativity, and we've produced 17 books focused on telling the story of the cultures of Africa.
People are always asking us, where did you meet? Well, it happened in Africa, and Carol was finishing her book, Maasai, on the border of Kenya and Tanzania, as you can see, at the foot of Mount Kilimanjaro. And her father, wonderful father, came out from America to give her a birthday present. And he chose to give her a hot air balloon ride over Maasai land. Well, the balloon pilot turned out to be my brother Simon. And Simon and Carol were both young, attractive, and very dynamic in those days. And at 1,000 feet high in the balloon, Simon looked closely into Carol's eyes and said, "You know, there's something I'd really like to tell you."
And my heart was beating wildly.
And then, still looking closely into her eyes, he said, "I'd love you to meet my sister."
My heart sank.
Simon had realized this incredible close potential friendship between the two of us, and we were both lone travelers in Africa and both passionate about recording the African traditional ceremonies. When the balloon landed, he immediately wrote me a very effusive letter about Carol. And at the end of the letter, he said, "I am your brother, I want you to meet Carol, and I need to know how the meeting went."
There it is. Angela and I finally met 1 year later in Nairobi at African Heritage Gallery. And we realized that Simon was right. We really were kindred spirits with a shared love of the traditional cultures of Africa. Within a week, we were photographing side by side at a Maasai warrior ceremony on the border of Tanzania. And that was the beginning of a 45-year collaboration.
This map of Africa shows you the extent of the journeys we've done in the last 45 years. We've now covered 45 out of 56 countries in Africa, recording in each country ceremonies that span the life cycle from birth to death. We've also covered over 150 different cultures. The means of travel is very important. It's extremely important to get into the most remote corners of Africa to see the extraordinary ceremonies at their very best. So we've had to do various means of travel to achieve this. Top left, you can see us in a dugout canoe. We're crossing the various rivers near the Nile, the tributaries of the Nile, and looking for the dry season cattle camps of the Dinka people. In top right, we're in Djibouti, and we're traveling by four-wheel drive across the Danakil Depression, which is 431 feet below sea level, extremely hot, looking for the Afar nomads. In the center, we had to do an extraordinary trip in order to reach the Soma, who live in a very remote corner of southwest Ethiopia. We traveled by mule train, 15 animals across 10,000-foot mountains, packed with everything we needed for a 5-week stay. When we arrived in Somaland, a woman rushed out to greet us, and she was quivering with excitement. And Carol and I looked at each other and we said, we're the first outsiders she's ever seen.
And in the lower right, we're traveling by foot and by camelback with the Wadabe nomads of the Sahel of Niger. We're searching for the annual Garawal ceremony, which is a male beauty and charm pageant where men perform rolling their eyes, showing off their teeth, and the women pick their boyfriends, husbands, and lovers. We lived off a calabash of milk for 6 weeks trying to find the ceremony, and whenever we grew impatient, Chief Macau would look us in the eye, wag his finger, and say with proverbial nomad wisdom, "She who cannot bear the smoke will never get to the fire." And in this way, Angela and I mastered the art of patience and perseverance.
For each of our field trips, we write detailed field journals at night. We log all the photographs we've taken during the day and also write down any interesting experience that's happened in the last 24 hours. We now have over 200 of these diaries in London in the archive, and they cover our life's work in Africa.
And here's a look at the inside pages of our diaries. We always keep calendars with details of what's happened, what we've photographed, our reactions every day. And we draw maps of areas that we're exploring for the first time. And trained as an artist, I always do drawings of masks and objects that are difficult to photograph and seem very valuable and fascinating to us. Now, for the work we do, we always have to be ready on very short notice to leave home base. And here's an example. We're filming and photographing funerals in Madagascar. We get a telephone call in the middle of the night from Tanzania saying that a once every 14-year ceremony, a Maasai warrior passage to elderhood, is about to start in 48 hours. This is like waving a red flag to a bull. Angela and I raced to the airport, took the first plane to South Africa, the next plane to Kenya, drove 17 hours to get to the ceremonial site, and had to cross the border on a dirt road in the dark of the night because we didn't have visas.
When we arrived at the escarpment overlooking Tanzania, we couldn't believe our eyes. In front of us, coming over the horizon, was a snake line of 900 Maasai warriors, and they were all dressed in beautiful traditional red togas, and they had iron bells attached to their thighs that literally jangled as they moved. We followed the warriors into the ceremonial manyatta.
A sea of red flags stretched as far into the horizon as the eye could see. Now for the Maasai, the color red symbolizes blood, life force, and the hot, fiery temperament of the Maasai warriors. The warriors gathered in the center of the manyatta, and the elders came up to us and said that they feared that this ceremony might never happen again. Would we please record it in detail and give them this record for posterity? And of course we did.
This ceremony, the Maasai warrior to elderhood ceremony, is one of the most poignant in a Maasai man's life. It's at this time he's actually going to lose his beautiful jewelry, which has signified his warrior pride and his warrior handsomeness for the last 14 years. It's going to be discarded for life, and they're going to now address the elders, and they have to realize that the best years of their lives are behind them. They're no longer free to roam the plains and woo young women, but they have to settle down, marry, have children, and they have to look after the herds and the community.
We'd like to show you a short film of this very ceremony. Over the past 4 decades, Angela and I have filmed and photographed hundreds of ceremonies that span the human life cycle. We've decided to present to you a very short selection of our favorite photographs from across the continent that illustrate the tremendous diversity and creativity of African peoples. Oops. Thank you. Childhood. African children are treasured, and they're often brought up by the entire community.
Initiations. Individuals in Africa, across the continent, have incredible significant rituals in their lifespan which help train them for each new stage of life.
Courtship. There are hundreds of different courtship practices in Africa. The Wadabe nomads roll their eyes and show off their beautiful teeth in order to attract women.
The Dinka of South Sudan wear striking color-coded bodices to indicate when they're available for marriage.
And the peoples of the Omo Valley decorate their bodies with paint to attract the female eye. And the women create beautiful floral headdresses, and even headdresses made out of millet stalks, their staple.
The Barabeg girls of Tanzania imitate the dances of the crested crane to attract their boyfriends and lovers.
Marriage. Weddings are a time when the most beautiful adornment is brought out. A Himba mother tresses the hair of her daughter, and the Himba wear perfumed ochre and beautiful hides at marriage times.
The Rashida receive their largest veil at marriage, but they're actually, according to the Islam Purdah, are veiled for life.
Angela and I have a great passion for photographing brides. This is an Afar bride from Ethiopia,
And a Turkana bride from Kenya,
a Fulani bride from Mali,
a Zulu bride from South Africa,
and an Indabeli bride also from South Africa.
royalty. Kings and queens of Africa wear extraordinary royal paraphernalia, which is not only beautiful, but highly symbolic.
Your petty elder queens from South Africa. And here's the Kuba Kingdom, the Royal Guard, one of the most powerful kingdoms in Africa.
We have just shown you a quick span of ceremonies across the continent, and we'd now like to take you into a journey into Africa's spirit world. We have worked in West Africa for many weeks with an initiated voodoo priest called Godfried. And Godfried took us further and deeper into the spirit world than we'd ever been before. In Burkina Faso, he introduced us into a secret society of masks that performed rituals to guarantee the actual success of the cultivation of the land.
Godfried explained to us that when the mask channels the spirits, the spirit world, it is able to perform superhuman feats. And we made a film about the spirit world because we wanted to show you how powerful it was and bring it to life for you in this very hall. Oops.
The leaf masks of Africa are believed to be the oldest masks, and they're made from the leaves of a sacred tree, so you only see them for a few hours and they return to the forest at night.
This is a voodoo mask from Benin, and it's believed that it's propelled by the spirits and that there's no one inside. The mask is tipped over to show everyone that it's empty, that there's actually no one inside of that mask.
The magical lunar masks come from one tiny village in Africa, and you can only see them at the time of full moon. They dance to trap the power of the moon to protect the fertility of young girls.
And this is a Guro mask from Ivory Coast, who performs at the entrance of the sacred forest during male initiations.
Ambako.
50 years ago, Carol and I began our journey in Africa, and we were both fascinated by capturing beautiful images of traditional people. Then as our journey continued, Africa began to capture us. With its ability to open our eyes into this extraordinary world of creativity, a world where there are many ways of living a life, and traditional values of ancient cultures that have really changed our lives. We now realize how much we've learned from these ancient cultures. The importance of community, not only for survival, but for enveloping individuals, giving them a sense of support and belonging. And the benefit of elders living in a community and sharing their wisdom on a daily basis. And the life passages, the value of life passages, which actually teach and define to us exactly what is needed at each stage of life, making an easier transition in life and definitely less anxiety in the process of growing up. And also important are the great ceremonies and rituals that keep us in balance with our own environment and in touch with our own spirit world.
Each time we return from Africa, we realize how many of these values have been lost in the Western world. And due to the chaos and conflict in our globalized societies, we realize that it is ever more urgent to understand and take to heart the messages that come from these ancient cultures. These messages are both our guide and our map to the future. And this is particularly poignant to us because we realize that over 40% of what we've recorded no longer exists.
One of the things we learned in Africa, if not the most important thing, is that although we appear physically very different from one another, some of us are naked, some of us are dressed, some of us are scarified, and some of us are veiled, some of us are lip-plated, and some of us are painted. We are all human beings, and we have exactly the same human emotions and human needs. Understanding each other's cultures, celebrating our similarities and absorbing our differences, we believe is not only essential for the evolution of humankind, but paramount to the pursuit of world peace.
In closing, we'd like to share with you a couple of the projects that we're currently working on. The first is the Africa Online Museum. This is an online museum that we've created with the University of Würzburg, Germany, and 40 African universities. And this is a museum that takes the best of our study of all the cultures we've worked in across the continent in terms of our still images, video films, educational essays, and music recordings. and presents this to students of Africa, to students of the world, to all lovers of Africa, free of charge. We feel that this online museum is very much attached to a concept of reciprocity that we learned in Africa and which we took to heart. What you take, you always give back. The Africa Online Museum, with its website, it's now open and online.
The African Ceremonies Archive. One of our biggest goals is to find an active home for our African archive, either in a university or a museum, where we can protect and keep all of the original materials, all the films and videos, everything for life. And also, even more so than that, enable it to be used as a tool, an educational tool, to reach people worldwide. The archive consists of over 500,000 images, 1,000 hours of video film, and also, as you know, 200 illustrated diaries. We have been told that this is the most comprehensive archive of its kind in the world, and we want to ensure its legacy for future generations. Now, people keep coming up to us and looking at us and saying, "Have you finished your field work in Africa?" And we think, oh my God, we must be looking old. And we have to say, well, absolutely not. We haven't finished our field work in Africa. And when you look at this map, next map to come, this map, you'll realize there's some shaded areas, and this is indicating that there's still 9 countries in Africa out of 54 countries that we need to record, and we'd like to do those in the next 3 to 4 years. Carol and I feel strongly that our role in the future of exploration lies in the recording and the conservation of African cultures. But it also lies in the making available of Africa's incredible rich cultural heritage to every corner of the world, to the world at large.
We'd like to close by a very wonderful African story. Each time we finish a book, we take it back to Africa to show all those people who have helped us make it. When we completed our last double-volume book, African Twilight, we took it to Chief Macau on the edge of the Sahara Desert. He had seen perhaps 2 or 3 books in his entire lifetime. He opened our books. He turned the pages and meticulously studied every single one. And when he finished, he looked up at us and said in his language, "This is Magani Yegitata," which means medicine not to forget. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.